Hi, I'm Cassie, the English teacher. Today's video is a little bit different. I am not going to talk about my family's move specifically. I'm going to talk more generally about just the decision to leave the US and how maybe a framework for how you can think about maybe which country to try to go to try to move to. So it's not specific to Uruguay at all. It is meant more as a framework. And I'm especially going to talk to trans people because that is the group that is being attacked in the US. And I hope that this video doesn't get me on the wrong side of YouTube. If you have different political beliefs, save it. I've been in a safe and nice country too long to care about BS politics that you have. So keep that in the US. If, however, you are trans or you know someone who's trans or a family member is trans and you are thinking about how to be safe in this difficult time, that's what this video is about. So I'm going to start out with a disclaimer. I'm not an expert. I don't know any of the visas situations to anywhere else in the world. I know how to move to Uruguay. That's it. And I kind of barely know that. So truly, I am only going to talk about like the very first stage of decision making because I know that when you are afraid, when I'm afraid, it inhibits my prefrontal cortex, right? It makes it very difficult for me to think about things. And I think maybe having a framework for making this decision might help someone. Maybe it won't. I don't know, but I hope it helps. That's why I'm making the video, okay? So that's my disclaimer right off the bat. This is not going to be a like how to move to these countries, what documents to get, what visas, that is somebody else who specializes in that can make that video. I'm going to talk about like a more like even before you get to that stage when you're just thinking, should I leave and where should I be thinking about going? Got it? Okay. So I am always going to start out this discussion. I've done a couple of webinars about this too. I always start out this discussion with this chart because I want to hold space for people who find it harder to leave, okay? So I like to have this chart here because I think that every single situation, every single family is totally different. We have different situations. Some people have an elderly parent they're taking care of. Some people have custody agreements. Some people just they're inflexible. They haven't traveled. They have a hard time learning languages, whatever. Like there are reasons that would make it more difficult for person A than person B. And that's okay. And I just like to put that out there that nobody should ever judge anyone for leaving and nobody should ever judge anyone for staying. And whether or not, whatever choice you make doesn't mean that you love yourself or maybe your trans kid any more or less than the choice somebody else makes. So please know that right from the beginning that if you cannot leave the US, if you go through this process and you just realize I can't do it, that's okay. Like don't beat yourself up about it, you know. You can feel extremely threatened, but, you have a lot to lose in the US, or it's just more difficult for you to move. So you may not be able to. Versus if somebody, if you've lived abroad before, or you're already bilingual, or you already have done this before, or you've traveled a lot, you may not need to feel that threatened and be like, yeah, screw it, let's go to another place. Let's check out this other country. So just kind of knowing that, I wanted to start with that. So I'm going to give 4 categories that I think make sense in my brain anyway on how to think about this and how to evaluate different countries and compare them against each other. The first one is the easiest to do your research online, is legal protections. Okay, so you want to see legal protections like obviously marriage protections, being able to change your documents like without surgery, without anything like that. Discrimination bans is great to see. Conversion therapy bans, great to see. Protections for trans kids is rare, but like that really puts it way high up on the list, right? You want to look at all of those different factors of legal protections. And what I want to say is you can find a lot of listicles with countries that are safe for trans people or whatever. I look at it like I want a proactive law protecting trans people. Okay, so some countries will end up on these listicles because there aren't any laws banning trans people. There's no laws banning trans healthcare. There's no laws banning changing your name. No, you want an active, proactive law that says we guarantee your rights as a trans person. That's like platinum level. That's the best you can get, okay? So you want to look and see how the law is phrased. You know, is it an absence of a law banning something, or is it a law guaranteeing your right to something? That's very different. If you have a trans kid and you just move to a country where there's no law existing that says they can't get treatment, that's very different than moving to a country that says it is their right to get treatment. Can you see the difference there between those? So that's always the best if it's proactive. Secondly, if you are leaving the US, you're already well aware that this whole system where in one state you might have rights and in another state you don't is a terrible system. Like it ends up being where you don't have rights anywhere, basically. So don't jump out of the frying pan into the fire. Look for a country that has this law on a federal level. Like it's not state by state, region by region, department by department. It is the whole country has the same law, and it is proactively protecting your rights. That's the best case scenario. The third thing I look at is what was the backlash against this law when it was passed? So if you have a country where the law was passed and then the next year 48% of people were mad about the law and tried to get it overturned, that's an indicator, right, of how people feel. If you have a country where the law was passed and they couldn't even get 10% of the population to sign a petition to try to overturn it, Uruguay, that's a good thing too, right? Like that's a huge sign that like, yeah, this law passed and everybody was fine with it, or most everyone was fine with it. You're never going to have a situation where everyone's fine with it, but most people were fine with it or couldn't be bothered to argue with it. That's the best case scenario. So making sure that it's a federal law, making sure that it's proactive, and making sure that you kind of gauge what was the reaction after it was passed. All of those things are Googleable. You can look them up easily online. So the second thing, the second category in this decision-making process is the cultural attitude. This is very difficult to look up online. I mean, pretty much impossible. It is very difficult to get a feel for how a culture treats people without being there in that culture. Like it just is really difficult. What I would say is the best thing you can do is find people in your target country that you're considering who are trans and talk to them. Ask them about their experience, ask them for anecdotes, ask them how they feel walking down the street, etc. It's just like on my channel, I have an interview with my friend who visited me who's Black, because I can't tell you what Black people are treated like here. I'm not Black, right? But she can. So she was nice enough to do an interview. I can't tell you what it feels like to be trans here in Uruguay, but a trans person can. So you need to seek them out, talk with them, talk with multiple people in multiple areas. Like, do the best you can to get a really, really solid representation of the cultural attitudes. If you are looking for a person to talk to, my recommendation, I know everyone hates Facebook, but unfortunately, that seems to be where a lot of the immigrant expat groups are. If you are feeling very frightened right now and you don't want to post anything that, like you don't want to go post in one of those groups, you could use the search function in the group and find anybody else talking about it and just reach out to them directly. And I will tell you, like, from being here, I know a lot of trans people here. Like, we're all aware of what's going on up there in the US. And so if somebody reached out and said, I want to talk with you about your experience, can we use Signal, or can I email you through Proton or something like that? A lot of people would be amenable to that because they recognize, especially if it's somebody who immigrated from the US. So, just try to find people you can talk to one-on-one. And the more people you talk to, the better you're going to feel and the more secure in your decision that you're going to feel. And that's the best way to do it. You can also look at things like religious beliefs. There's nothing wrong with religion, but it just tends to correlate with, the more religious a society is, the more hate there is for trans people. So if you find a country that's less religious, that's a good sign. And then just societal values overall, like here in Uruguay, people just mind their business. Like, that's just such a core value. Just not worrying about what somebody else is doing. I had a friend visit who presents in a very unique way. And, he was telling me, like, are Uruguayans depressed or what's going on? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, nobody looks at me on the street. And I'm like, okay. He's like, but I present this way that in the US everyone looks at me. Like, I'm very extreme, right, in my appearance, and people look at me and nobody looks at me here. And I started laughing. I'm like, yeah, because nobody cares. Like, nobody cares that you look like that. People just look how they look, and we don't give a crap, So that leads itself to being more friendly to trans people, right? Or gay people, lesbian people, whatever. Like, nobody is looking at you. Nobody cares. So even like evaluating just the society overall, not just in the LGBTQ vein, but like overall, do people care a lot what other people are doing? Is there a lot of individual freedom? Do people express themselves, et cetera, et cetera? And then the last thing I would look at is, what is the role of social issues in politics? So if you have a country where the political debates are typically, about the budget or governmental services, things like that, that's a good sign. If you have something that starts to look like the US, where it's all of this nonsense that just gets clicks, that's probably not going to bode well for you. Number 3 is medical care. So you want to make sure that access to medical care is legally protected. That's, again, pretty easily Googleable. But then you also want to make sure that medical care is available, because there's a difference between medical care is legally allowed and medical care exists, right? So you want to make sure that you can get gender affirming care and that it is available on a scale that is appropriate for the needs of the community. That's again where talking to a trans person already living in that country is going to be super helpful, because they will be able to tell you what kind of medical care there is, and is it difficult to get in, how long are the waits, et cetera, et cetera. So you can't just look at, is it allowed? You have to look at, does it exist? Are there clinics? Because it might be allowed, but there's no clinics. So then it doesn't matter if it's allowed. Does that make sense? You also want to make sure that it's affordable compared to the US. Most of the world is extremely affordable in healthcare, but just making sure that you are checking that box. How much is it? Is it included in like healthcare plans? Is it included? What is the cost going to be? And getting a really good idea of that is going to be really important. And then the last thing, so if you start that funnel and you start with legal protections, that's going to get rid of a lot of places already. Cultural attitudes, healthcare, you're going to get down to just a few countries that make sense, right? We also said like what countries speak the same language as us, and we spoke 2 languages, so we had a bigger selection, right? But you might say, okay, I studied French, so a French-speaking country, whatever. You get your funnel going, you've got your contenders, right? That's when you have to start doing a deeper dive into visas and immigration and all of those kinds of things. And that I cannot help you with because it is so country specific. It's specific to your job. If you are a doctor, you might have a totally different selection of countries than I had as a teacher. You just have to look at your situation and then what the countries that you're considering require and try to figure out, okay, what looks like probably the easiest route for us. I'm making this video in October 2025. Asylum is still not a thing for trans people from the US. I would not advise you to wait for a country to allow asylum seekers. It's just still not a thing. And it can really mess up your chances because if you apply and you're rejected, you can't go to that country, depending on the country, for years afterwards. So it's a really risky thing to do, and it's still not really an actual option right now. So you need to be thinking about, what can I do? Like, can I get a remote job? Can I, whatever it is, can I go study abroad and then get a master's degree in something useful that then I can stay there? Like, you have to be thinking in these terms because it's just, unfortunately, like, it's just going to be a while. It's going to have to get really, really bad, I think, before countries are going to accept asylum seekers. And if the global economy is getting worse, that's going to just take even longer, because that's the number one thing people get mad about if the economy is bad, is immigrants. So, the best thing you can do is make yourself as marketable to a country as possible and say, you want my family in your country. Like, we have skills and we can earn money and we can add to the economy, we can add to the community, and we're going to integrate into the community. That's the best attitude you can have. That may not be what people want to hear, but that's the truth. Right now, where we are, that's reality. So it's better to just go ahead and be building that up, and then maybe if asylum happens at some point, great. But if it doesn't, you will be building up your skills or whatever to be able to get out. So yeah, I hope that helps. Keep in mind that nobody can predict the future. If you went back to 2014 or something and said, you know, it's not going to be safe for trans people in the US anymore in a few years, like that would be hard to believe, right? Because everything seemed to be going up. But unfortunately, things can turn really fast. So keep in mind that we all just make the decision, the best decision in the moment with the information that we have. So I hope that I provided you with a rubric to kind of consider this decision that is helpful, and just best of luck. I'm so sorry that all of this is happening. I am really sad by the state of everything in the world, and I wish it wasn't the way it is, but people just keep peopling, you know, all over the place. So, oh, well, that's a really sad note to end it on, but, you know, it can be okay. Like, you can get to a new place and build a new life and be okay. In the US, I helped refugees and immigrants all the time for 15 years, so I saw so many people come in and rebuild their life. It is fine. It happens. I'm doing that here in Uruguay, so I don't want to end it on a sad note. I want to end it on a positive note of, you know, you can get to a good place again. So if you're in a low spot right now, just know I love you. I hope that it gets better, and you can, you know, there are ways to if you're in a low spot right now, please just know that I love you, and I hope that you can do whatever is the best decision for yourself and your family, and rebuild a life in safety. That's basically all I want for everyone, is safety. So, okay, before I get depressed, I'm going to end the video here. Let me know in the comments, you know, what you think, or if you have anything to add. If you've moved abroad and you did it differently, if you considered other things, that would all be wonderful, because again, I'm only one person, so I don't speak for everything. I'm not an expert. Alrighty, do all the things, and I'll see you next time. Bye.